If you're just joining us from last time, we have been working on a to-do list app capable of creating tasks. We have gotten as far as adding the tasks. What we still need to do is be able to edit them here and then do some kind of general finagling of them on the main screen. So jump right back into the code. We have essentially finished our add task view controller, and we are ready to move on to this edit task view controller. We don't actually have a class for that yet, so we'll jump right in and make a new UI view controller subclass. Call it RH edit task view controller. Again, this is a table view controller subclass because we are subclassing table view controller, that's why. It is not targeted for iPad, and we do not need a zib because we are using storyboards. Create it in the same directory as everything else. And here we go. Again, from last time, since we are using static cells here, remember we're just using the table view as kind of a framework for our controls. We will go ahead and delete all of the table view methods, basically from the bottom of the file up through the pragma mark for table view data source, making sure not to accidentally kill a little n thing here. We will also go ahead and hook it up before we forget, because we always forget, in our storyboard. Here we'll make sure this is a RH edit task view controller. Now let's think about what we actually want to do here. We don't have a save button per se, so we want, whenever there's a change happening, either when someone's typing in the name or when someone clicks the switch to switch the done state, we want any change like that to actually get kind of instantly reflected into the object, the task object. So for that reason, let's sort of have a, well, definitely have just a single IB action. It's called. We'll call it. Let's see. Call it task data changed. And we'll drop in an implementation here. Right now we're not doing anything. We will also want to keep track of this text field and this switch so that we can check when we're notified that there's been an update, we can check them and use their values to update that object. So let's make some properties for those. The first one is a text field, not a text view, called name field. The second one is a UI switch. Call it done switch. Go ahead and synthesize both of those. All right. We'll also want this edit task view controller to have a task. Actually, also, we need to make sure these are both IB outlets so we can hook them up in the interface builder. And then we'll make one last property for our RH task. And we're not going to import RH task, we'll just make mention of it here. And we'll need to synthesize that as well. Oops, strong. So the view controller will be given a task to start out with, and whenever a change happens here, what we'll do is we'll say self.task self.name. Actually, I need to import RH task. Or self.task.name equals self.namefield.text. We'll just copy that straight in. We'll say self.task.done self.doneSwitch.isOn. Sometimes people use is for these Boolean properties, sometimes people don't. I haven't here. Do whatever suits you, obviously. So whenever task data change gets called, we just will update the task in place. Very, very easy. So the other thing we need to do is when we first sort of browse to this view control, we want to already populate these controls with the current values of the task. So here in view did load, let's actually assume that the task will already be set by the time this gets called, and that actually happens as a result of our segue, because we will be setting the task in the segue. It will be called before this view did load, so we can actually put any initialization stuff here. We will say self.namefield.text equals self.task.name. You can see you're actually doing exactly the opposite, or the reverse of what we did in the updating of the model object. You can say self.doneSwitch. And here's why I don't use it, because you have to call these set on, like a specific property setter that doesn't use the dot syntax very well. And we will set it to self.task.done. And we'll just do that right at the beginning. So now, as long as the task gets set, the name field should be pre-populated, and the done switch should be set properly. And then whenever either of those are changed, the actual model object, the source, the task, will be updated with the proper values. Obviously, we need to hook all these up. I'll extend the little side pane here so we can see our object hierarchy. See, here's the edit task view controller. Use that to connect name field and done switch. Oops. Done switch. You can see if you accidentally, you see I hooked up view accidentally there. I can browse over here, find that. Yeah, see, view is hooked up to switch. Here, I'll just click the X. Yeah. Don't want that to happen. So that should be populated by default. Now, the last thing you have to hook up is the changing or the updating of the model object. So we'll go ahead and actually we don't need to draw a line from here, because we're actually going to use a different event. So click on the text field here. We've got editing change, and that's actually what we want to call. And that happens, basically when a letter is typed on the keyboard. So that will call task data changed. And our on switch, we'll actually be using the default, or done switch, I mean. We'll actually be using the default event, so we can just draw straight from there. And they'll actually, like you could see, we will be calling the same method for both of them. And we can see here in task data changed that both the text field here and the switch here, and it's nice so you can highlight it and see which ones call it, they will both call that IB action. So that's actually hooked up now. One last thing we need to do is we need to give this view controller its task when we first start. We'll do that from our list view controller like we did in the past. Right here in our prepare for segue, we'll add an else if segue.identifier, and now we remember that we actually haven't given these identifiers names. Here's one sort of dumb thing about this is you get a warning if you name two segues the same thing. Even if they're going to the same place and serving the same purpose, they actually have to have different names. So we will give them different names. Here's a segue you can see for the done sort of task. So we'll call that edit done task segue. And then we'll call the other one edit not done task segue. And again, it'd be great if we could just use the same name, but Xcode complains about it pretty specifically, so we'll be good citizens and obey Xcode. So we can say if the identifier is equal to string, edit done task segue, or use the two bars for or, segue.identifier is equal to string edit not done task segue. So yes, we did just make two different names to the segues and then use them, in the exact same line, and basically remove their unique identities. But again, we're good citizens for it. So if this happens, here's where we actually need to pass the task off to the editing view controller. Remember here we had to first grab our navigation controller and then find the add task view controller from inside it. If you remember from our storyboard, we don't have this in-between navigation controller here for our edit. So it's actually quite a bit easier. Well, one line easier. We need to import our edit controller. Edit task view controller. And now here we'll say edit task view controller. And again, we'll just pull it right off the segue. This is segue.destination view controller. We'll say edit task view controller.task equals, and now here's kind of the funny part. We need to figure out which task we need to pass over to our edit task view controller. This will be determined by which row the user clicked in the table view. So what we actually need to do is figure out what the index of the row in the table view is, and then use that same index in our list of tasks. So it's going to be kind of a funny little statement here. We will say self.tasks, object at index, obviously, but this index will be self.tableview dot index path for selected row. So that gives us back some index path, but to actually get the index from that, we say dot row. So let's go over this real quick again. We're doing self.tasks, object at index, simple enough, but then we have to first look at our table view, then ask it for its index path for selected row, because this will still currently be basically selected because the user tapped it with their thumb. And this index path to get the actual integer off it, we have to call row on it. So this will retrieve the task at the same index as the row the user clicked and give it to the edit task view controller. And that should be all we need to get this thing off the ground. So we'll see what happens here. We'll try running it. And remember, because we're not using any kind of data persistence, everything gets cleared the first time. And actually, before we do anything else, let's fix this. You can see those two tasks still show up. Just delete those entirely. Make sure we leave our initialization of the mutable array of tasks, but we can delete that at the initial creation of them. Alright, so we'll try adding a new task. We'll call it my task. And if we drill into it here, you can see that its name is my task, and its state is not done. So we can add change to the end of it, go back, and nothing happened. Now what actually happened here is the table view just didn't update. The task has been changed and its name is now my task space changed, but the table view hasn't updated. And to prove that, we actually go just add some other task. And remember, as a side effect of adding a task, we actually tell the table view to update itself, so this will kind of by extension update for the last thing we did too. It'll change the name of that existing task. And that's what happened. So what we actually need to do is have the table view update itself a little more frequently. Before we had it in our add task view controller here, we told the task list view controller table view to reload its data. This is probably bad code anyway, because this is really something that view controller should manage. So we'll go ahead and delete that just as is, and then jump back into our task list view controller, we've actually got a couple different methods we can use here. We've got view will appear and view did appear. These will get called whenever we sort of return to our list. So we can actually just add in a call to reload the data here. And actually, I'm not sure if there's a difference between these two, so let's try it. Let's try view did appear first. Table view, and remember, it's just going to be a simple call to reload data. We'll see that this works, then we'll try the other method just to see if there's any difference. So we'll make a task called new task, and then add changed to it. And you can see it slid back. And then we actually could see the text appear at the end there. I wonder if using the other method will make that a little bit smoother. Let's go ahead and cut and paste this into view will appear, which should get called before the view is visible, which might even happen before the entire transition, which might make that a lot smoother. So go ahead and run it again. See if our hypothesis is correct. Make a new task. And edit it. And yeah, it did. It changed it before we even got there. So perfect. We'll leave it right there. And for future reference, I guess, view will appear is a good place to make changes if you're going to be headed back to a view controller. So now, and we can see that this gets called both when we add a new task and when we edit it. So it's a perfect place for it, and it puts the responsibility to update the table view in the actual view controller that contains it, which is better practice anyway. So let's have a look at our sort of finished app as far as the base functionality goes. And at this point, it really should be finished as far as base functionality goes. So get milk. Now we should also, we haven't tested this yet, be able to set it to done. And yeah, it grays out just like it should. So if I say learn to program, this one should be, yep, back like it should be. Should be able to change both at once. Yep, both of them changed. Now the only thing we're really missing is the ability to delete these. And actually, it is also nice to be able to reorder these. Let's say you've finished everything at the top of your list and you want to, move some more important tasks up to the top. Having to delete them and recreate them is kind of a terrible way to have to reorganize your list. So those are both two features that would be really nice. And it turns out, thanks to iOS, and if you're an Android developer, you'll know the pain associated with this. We get these for free, more or less. And this actually appears in our task list view controller. Remember, there's all these funny methods for the table view that have, a lot of them actually even been commented out. These are exactly the methods we need to start looking at. First, we'll look at the simple swipe to delete. Here is a method called table view commit editing style for row at index path. This is actually the method that gets called when a row is inserted or deleted. Actually, we're just going to handle the delete case here. The insert case, if I'm not mistaken, you can have a, I think it's a blank cell at the end of your table view where people can sort of click in that last cell to add a new one. We have a specific add button, so we don't need that. So we'll just leave this second part of the if statement for the insert blank. But here we'll actually look at the code we need to add to delete. So we're past an editing style. It's basically what action is taking place here on this table view. So if editing style is equal to UI table view cell editing style delete, then we're actually going to delete it. So the first thing we actually have to do, and they've actually stuck a comment in here for us so we don't mess it up, is delete the row from our data source. So that's easy enough. Say self.tasks, delete, remove object at index. That's what we want. So what index should we use? Well, they give us for row at index path and give us an index path, so let's use that. Index path, and remember we have to call row on it to actually get its integer value. So this actually removes from our background collection of tasks the object. Then the kind of cool part is we call it to our table view to delete the rows at index path, NSArray, and actually we have to call it with a array of index paths, so that's why I have this kind of funny constructor that creates a new array with just one index path in it. And then it says with row animation, UI table view row animation fade. Now, this is kind of cool because we could also just call table view reload data like we have been in the past, and it will update the table view. The row we deleted will be gone, and everything will be hunky-dory, but no animations will happen. By doing it this way, we specifically tell it which object to remove, and then specifically tell the table view which object to sort of animate a deletion for. Keep in mind that this will throw an exception or an error if consistency is lost. So if you delete the first thing in your list and then you tell the table view to delete the last thing in its list, it will complain and crash. So this is something to be used with great care as long as you know exactly what you're deleting. In this case, it's very easy because we just have an array of things. So we delete the thing at the proper index and then tell the table view to delete the thing at the same index. Implementing this method allows us to just by default have the swipe to delete turned on for our list, which is a really cool thing. So let's make a new task. And now you just click and swipe across, and it goes into delete mode. You can click the delete button. The object is deleted. You can see that if we add more than one task, then delete one, the other one will slide up really nicely. So it's a really cool thing, and seriously, we cut it in 30 seconds or so. And all we had to do was update our background objects. Now, the last thing we need to do is be able to sort of rearrange things. This is kind of a tricky subject, but not really, I guess. What we want to do is add a new bar button item. In bar button items, it's actually a little bit difficult to change the text in them, so we're just always going to have this one say edit. Switch its identifier here to edit. This will allow us to enter editing mode, basically. And in real life, you'd probably want a button that switches and says, edit tasks and then done editing or something like that. But just the word edit will work for us. We'll need to do something when it gets clicked. So we will jump back into our task list view controller and add a new IB action. Edit button pressed. This is actually an extremely simple implementation. Okay, so in here we're actually just going to say self.editing, which is we can see from the documentation. Let's actually see what it says. A Boolean value indicating whether the view controller currently allows the user to edit the view contents. This actually extends right down into our table view and puts the table view in, quote, editing mode. So basically this edit button is just going to be a toggle for this editing property. So we can say self.editing equals not self.editing. Meaning if self.editing is true, when this button gets pressed, it will become false, and vice versa, or yes and no instead of true and false, obviously. And this actually will kind of magically work, it turns out. We need to hook it up, obviously. And actually, I think we can just drag right onto the bar up here to hook things up. Oh, maybe not. Oh, actually, that's the... Looks like I have added this bar button item to the wrong view controller. This is the beauty of having a storyboard. You can just drag things between the different files. So I think if I just drag it right up here onto this bar, yep, I can hook it up right there without having to open that view hierarchy. Let's give it a try and see what happens right now. Maybe it didn't start. Alright, add a task so we can see what's actually going on here. Maybe we'll do 2 of them. Click the edit button, and you'll see it does toggle these 2 sort of states. Here's our default state, and then we're in this sort of editing state. There are these funny little buttons on the side. Clicking them will cause us to see a delete button, so we can actually have sort of an editing mode capable of deleting tasks. This is great because it gives the user sort of a secondary way of deleting things. Not everyone knows about the swipe to delete, and honestly, people who do know forget about it all the time. So it's good to have a secondary way of deleting things. What we really want as our sort of last feature, though, is the ability to reorder our tasks. It turns out this is just about as easy as anything. Jump back into our task list view controller, and there's only a couple more methods we haven't uncommented yet. There's one that says can move row at index path and move row at index path, and it's pretty obvious what they're going to do. For can move row at index path, in our case, every single task, there's no reason why you couldn't reorder any one task, so we're just going to return yes no matter what. If the task exists, it can be reordered. There's no reason for it not to be. You might have an app in some case where you'd actually need to do some computations to figure out if there's certain things that can't be moved, but here we don't care about that. So that works out great. Now, when the task is actually moved or reordered, this second method gets called. This is TableView, move row at index path, and you're given a from index path to index path, and you're given a second one. So basically, we have two indices that we're going to move. The beginning one and then the ending one of the object that's being moved. So this actually is nearly as easy as our delete. We're actually just rearranging the existing array that we've got. We actually have to do this in two steps, though, because there isn't a move item in the mutable array class. So we'll first pull out, called moved task. First pull it out of our array of tasks. So we can say self.tasks object at index, and we'll use the from index path dot row. Basically, find the task that is at the current index path, the from index path, the one that's being moved from, and save that. Then we will remove object at index. So now that we've saved it, we will remove it from the list. And this will be the same thing, from index path dot row. And now we will simply re-add it in its destination index. So we say self.tasks add object. And that's not even add object, we need an insert object. And this will be our moved task at index. This will be our to index path dot row. So basically we just save off the task, remove it from the list, from its original place, and insert it at its new place. Very simple implementation, but it does get quite a bit more complicated in a more complex app. So now that we've implemented this and the method that notifies the app that we are allowed to move things, we will hopefully see a very magical thing happen. Again, add a couple tasks. Alright, we'll mark one of them as done just to spruce up the look of things. Click the edit button, we see our existing deletes, but we also see these little sort of gripper icons. We can actually take these and move them to reorder our list. And each time that method we just wrote is being called. So when we click this and drill down into one of them, we can actually see task 3, make sure the names all still match up, task 2. Task 2 is still done. So we are sort of done. And really, like I said, that's it. We've completed the app. We've covered a lot of good things, particularly pertaining to storyboards and table views. At this point, you should be able to go off and make your own storyboard-centric app that basically has data presented in a hierarchical fashion, maybe in an editable fashion if you use some of our table view expertise we learned here. It turns out a lot of iPhone apps do follow this pattern. Lots of apps do actually just display data to you or allow you to edit data. So this is actually a very useful skill set to have, and because of storyboards and because of the quick and handy mechanisms that the iOS folks have put in there, this is actually a very easy thing to do. So thanks for watching, and have fun programming.